Hey, fantasy football friends. So, we're about halfway through our fantasy season here, and my team is finally starting to come together. It's starting to gel, and this happened last year too because of the waiver wire. The waiver wire has allowed me to pick up some great players that have been under the radar a little bit, and I've been paying attention and done my homework, and I've picked up some good ones. So we'll see how it goes from here on out, and I'm still adjusting, and that's really what this game is about. The waiver wire should be your friend. And we'll talk a little bit about trades in a little bit too, but the waiver wire should be your friend. You should really be focusing on that. So, speaking of the waiver wire, let's get right to it. The waiver wire this week, quarterbacks. It's pretty difficult. I got lucky this past week. I won in large part, wait for it, due to Joe Flacco. I know. I know. Who saw that coming? Well, I did a little bit, but I didn't expect 42 points and 5 touchdowns out of Mr. Flacco. But thank you, Mr. Flacco, for being so great this week when I needed you. Okay, but I do like Flacco this week too versus Atlanta. If you're looking for a quarterback, a lot of people are really high right now on Hoyer out of Cleveland versus Jacksonville. But I don't really see that going anywhere. He hasn't been great this year, and the Jaguars have only given up 9 and 11 points. No, sorry, 9 and 14 points in the past 2 weeks. That's not enough for me to get excited about. And they've been against about mediocre quarterbacks as well, just like Hoyer, who I do like, and this week is Carson Palmer versus the Raiders. The Raiders just gave up 31 points to Phillip Rivers last week, and I know it's Phillip Rivers, but they also gave up 24 points to Tannehill the week before. So I really like Carson Palmer. He looked great coming out against Washington, and granted, it was Washington, who's not that great, but he's looking good. And I know he's questionable right now, but he's going to start. He's going to start, and he's going to play well. So I say I could bank on Carson Palmer. In fact, I might be starting him myself this week. So, Carson Palmer, if you're looking for a quarterback. Running backs this week, I really like Forsett. Again, he's still not completely owned, so check and see if in your league that if he is owned, because Forsett versus Atlanta, great matchup. Great matchup, I think, Forsett. And he's doing really well. He's scoring a lot of points this year. He's ranked really highly among running backs and still not fully owned. So Forsett, I also like Isaiah Crowell versus the Jags. On another note, I think that DeMarco Murray is going to have a banner day versus the Giants. So if your opponent has DeMarco Murray, I'm really sorry for what he's about to do to you. Thankfully, he's on my team, so I don't have to worry about him. Okay, wide receivers. Eddie Royal versus Kansas City, and I like Malcolm Floyd versus Kansas City as well. Quite honestly, with wide receivers, if there's a hot quarterback out there like Phillip Rivers, go with their receivers, especially if you're looking for somebody. Yeah, he breaks it up and spreads the love a little bit. Not as much as Peyton Manning does, but you are going to get a touchdown this week if you pick up one of those wide receivers. So if you're looking for a wide receiver to fill a buy spot, Eddie Royal, Malcolm Floyd, I really like. I also like Brandon LaFell versus the Jets. Now, he's been up and down all this year, only owned in about 10% of the leagues, but he just scored 21 points versus Buffalo, and I think that the Patriots are going to stomp all over the Jets this week. I think Tom Brady is going to have a huge game. And that being said, Brandon LaFell is right in line there to take some of those touchdown passes from Tom Brady. Tight ends. Dwayne Allen, Indy versus Cincinnati is a good choice, as well as Larry Donnell of the Giants. Now, I don't like the fact that he's going up against the Cowboys, but I think that he will be the dump-off receiver for Eli, because Eli's going to be in a bunch of trouble, and he's going to need somebody to throw it to, and Larry Donnell's going to be the guy. So those are some great choices for you if you're looking for somebody to pick up this week. Now let's talk about my badass of the week last week. My badass of the week last week was, you heard it before, Joe Flacco. I can't even believe I'm saying it. Joe Flacco is my badass of the week. I got so lucky in getting him because, number one, I originally wanted Jake Locker versus the Jags, but obviously he didn't play. So I had to make a game time decision, and Flacco was still available. Palmer was also still available, but I wasn't sure that he was going to play. So I went with Flacco, and boy, was I glad I did. So Joe Flacco, you are my badass of the week. Thank you very much for those 42 points. You know, it's scary when you have Drew Brees as your quarterback and Flacco coming in just completely annihilated anything that Drew Brees has done this year for me. So, Drew Brees, you got some big shoes to fill. I'm not starting Drew Brees this week versus the Detroit Lions because I don't think he's going to do very well up there. So, moving on from Joe Flacco to my doghouse. Now, in my doghouse this week is, Kendall Wright. I picked up Kendall Wright versus, actually, I have two. Kendall Wright and Chris Ivory are both in the doghouse this week. Kendall Wright I picked up because he was going against the Jaguars. Kendall Wright versus the Jaguars. You know how many points he got for me? If that's not clear enough for you, that is 0. He got 0 points for me. And that is unacceptable. 0 points, Kendall Wright? Are you even playing in the NFL? Come on now. You're going to have one more shot this week. Hopefully you don't blow it. If you do, I'm going to dump you off my team because I'm quick like that. I don't like it. I don't like losing. We know that. Okay, so moving on to next week and the players that I'm starting this week. I am starting Carson Palmer, DeMarco Murray, Brandon Oliver, Eddie Royal, Kendall Wright, because he's got that one more shot. Torrey Smith I picked up. I like him versus Atlanta. I think he's going to have a big day. Rob Gronkowski, the Texans D versus Pittsburgh. Now, the D choices for me this week were not very good. The Texans D got my vote simply because of 3 words. Well, actually 2 letters in a word. J.J. Watt. He's going to score another touchdown, and I'm going to go ahead and take those points. And then Matt Prater is my kicker. On my bench, I have Drew Brees, Wes Welker, Pierre Thomas, Delaney Walker, and Joe Flacco. Now, I may do game time decisions and switch some people up, but that's my roster as of right now. So that's all for this week. Until next week, I hope that you score lots of points. I hope that your players remain injury-free and suspension-free. See you next week.